Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're back on Project Purple Rain. If you guys don't already know, this is part 4 of Project Purple Rain. So if you have not seen the previous episodes, please make sure you go back and do that before continuing on to this one. If you guys did watch part 3, you'll know that we did pretty much almost get the car started, but we had quite a major fuel leak happening on the fuel line behind the intake manifold. So in this episode, we're gonna go ahead and repair that line. Now, I did try to source a replacement line. I called the dealership. They told me that the part was discontinued. Looked around online and I could not find the exact replacement part for this line. But if you guys remember from the very first video, before we considered this Project Purple Rain, there was an original video where I went to the car lot to go look at this car, and we found that the fuel system was full of a bunch of junk or gunk that was in there. Well, it turns out that the whole fuel line from the front of the engine all the way to the back of the car where the gas tank is was completely rotted out. So what they actually did at the other shop before I even got the car is they went ahead, took those fuel lines out, and they ran a high pressure rubber hose, fuel injection hose from the back of the gas tank up to the front over here. Now on my end, once I got everything back together, I was just gonna go ahead and connect that factory line to the rubber line that they installed down underneath the car using a quick connect adapter, because the line had a quick connect end on it. But as you guys can see, after I connected everything, we had a fuel leak on that original line, which was still an original piece that connected to the back of the intake manifold. So at this point, I can't get the line for it. I'm already really behind schedule with this car. And you know, even if I could find something online, right now, all of the deliveries are delayed because we had this winter storm come through Texas, and now all of our deliveries are like way behind. So it's really difficult to get anything in the first place. So what I've decided to do to save time and to save money while getting a proper repair is we're just gonna go ahead and repair the line ourselves. I already went ahead and removed it. Now the good thing about it is that I didn't have to remove the intake manifold, because in this case, I was actually able to just kind of cut the line from the bottom, because again, I'm gonna go ahead and repair it. So at this point, it doesn't matter if I cut the line or not. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to attach a rubber hose to it, so it's gonna be flexible that we can kind of snake it in. So I was able to get the line off without having to remove everything that we did, putting on the intake manifold and all that stuff, because that was a lot of work. So now that we have the part out, I have it over here on the toolbox. Let me show you guys how we're gonna repair it. All right guys, so over here on top of the toolbox, I have the fuel line that we went ahead and took off of the car. This is where it connects to the back of the intake manifold. And you can see I went ahead and I cut it just using this little pipe cutter right here, because we're not going to be utilizing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this flange here, because this is where the two bolts bolt to the back of the intake manifold. You can see there's a little O-ring here that seals it to the intake. And we're going to go ahead and use some of this high pressure fuel injection hose. Now this stuff is made to withstand high pressure. It is for fuel injection systems, so this is going to be able to withstand the fuel pressure that we're going to run on this vehicle. Now, you know, we could simply just slide this piece over this 3/8 hose, which that's what size this line is here. It's 3/8. So I went ahead and I got a 3/8 hose. You know, we could slide that on there and go ahead and put a hose clamp on there, but we want to make sure that this thing is going to be secure and it's not ever going to come off. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this double flaring kit, so we can go ahead and put a flare on the end of this line, so that once we put this hose back on there and put a clamp on there, that flare is going to make sure that this line never comes off. So this kit is pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you guys how I use it. Again, just using the pipe cutter, we cut off the end here, and I did go ahead and I went ahead and I clamped this down to the backside. So if you guys look at this tool here, of course there's the beveled end here. This is where we're going to do our flare, and this end over here is flat. Well, because this line isn't really perfectly straight, it was hard to get a straight cut across this. So I went ahead and I stuck it in here backward like this and clamped it down because it was protruding a little bit here. And then I went ahead and I took my cutoff wheel. Let me show you guys. This is the cutoff wheel I have right now. It's not plugged in at the moment. And then I just kind of used this cutoff wheel, you know, of course in a safer manner. I had this clamped down and I didn't have my hand in the way, but you know, I was able to shave down the line and make it flush with this tool so that we know that this end is perfectly flat. Then, you know, just kind of take like a pocket knife or something, and you want to just kind of cut the remaining material off of the inside of this line so that we have a nice smooth edge, just like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and take some sandpaper and just kind of bevel off the edge over here so that it's not so sharp. You guys take a look at that. We have a nice clean edge here. Hopefully we can focus in on that right there. So we should be ready to go ahead and put this in the tool. All right, so taking a look at the tool, you guys can see this is 3/8 right here. So we are going to stick it into the hole that is made for the 3/8. And when we look on this side, of course, you guys can see the beveled edge, and that's where we're going to create our flare. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to let this line protrude out to match the size of this little piece here. So if you look in the kit, we have this little piece here, which is for the 3/8 size. If I can get it out, there we go. So take a look at that. That's for the 3/8 size. You can see that fits right into the line there. But what we're gonna wanna do is we're going to want to lay this on the tool like this, and we're going to want to kind of match this up, measure the height right about there, right about there. Looks about right. Now we're gonna go ahead and clamp this thing down, just tightening these screws here. We're just going to evenly tighten this thing down. That looks good. Let's go ahead and double check our measurement here. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on there. You guys can see we're matching right up where we need to. So we're gonna go ahead and stick this little piece in there. Then we're gonna go ahead and take this clamp here and slide it over. Let me go ahead and open it up first. Unscrew this little jack screw here. Then we're going to slide this over the tool here. Well, unfortunately, I did not position this right because you guys can see that I can't slide this clamp on here. So let me go ahead and pull this line or loosen it back up, and I'm going to turn this flange in line with this tool here. My mistake. Okay, that should be right about there. Let me go ahead and tighten it back down. Now we can go ahead and put our tool back on there. So we're gonna put this little adapter up there. Then we're gonna go ahead and put the clamp back on it. All right, guys, so I am running into a little bit of a problem with this tool, specifically pertaining to this clamp here, because when I put it on, even though I went ahead and I moved the flange, now that the flange is in line here, there just is not enough space here for me to slide this clamp over it so that I can line this thing up. So I may have to improvise here. I think we may end up having to go ahead and use the press to go ahead and press this thing down. Let me see what I can come up with here. All right, guys, so this is how I hope to go ahead and remedy this issue. You guys can see I have this C-clamp from my ball joint kit, and I put this receiver cup here to kind of be a support for this bar here. And if you take a look, we have our little piece on the line there, and we have this big jack screw for the C-clamp. So if I go ahead and I tighten this down, it should press this the way it was designed to. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this wrench and turn the top of it. It's actually really difficult to do in this position. I hate to use an impact, but maybe if I just use it lightly, I can probably just use my little 3/8 one. Okay, I know some of you guys are gonna cringe, but I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of do this gently with the impact tool. And I'm gonna be watching this. Okay, let's go ahead and take this off. There we go. Now let's go ahead and set this tool back up to go ahead and do the double flare, which is going to utilize the little triangular piece right here. So we're gonna go ahead and set that right up here, and then we're going to press that down. Okay, looks like we have it set up here. Again, our little triangular piece right here on the line. Once we go ahead and press this down, this should give us our double flare. And there we have it, double flared. Okay guys, so here we have it, our double flare. You can see this lip here at the top that we created. That's going to help us secure this hose. Once we put it on there and clamp it down, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not the cleanest double flare, but remember guys, we're not going to be sealing this to a line. This is going to have a hose that goes over it, and we're going to clamp it down. The other thing is that the clamp tool that we use inadvertently kind of creates these little ridges here, which I think actually is going to help even better once we tighten down the hose to give it some traction. So now that we have our double flared end, we're gonna go ahead and take our 3/8 fuel injection hose. Again, this is high pressure fuel injection hose. You guys can see it is fuel compatible and it works up to 225 PSI, which is well more than what we need. And it is specifically made for fuel injection. So this stuff is not cheap. I can't remember, but I think it's at least $6 or $7 a foot for this stuff. And we're going to be using this fuel injection style band clamp. These band clamps give us a nice even clamping around the surface of the hose. You guys can see that. So if you guys are looking for good hose clamp to use for fuel injection, you can find these in the clamp aisle at your local O'Reilly. That's where I got this fuel injection hose clamp. That's the part number there. So we're going to go ahead and slide the hose over this end here, which is easier said than done, because now that we have that double flare on the end, it may make it a little more difficult. Let me go ahead and spray some soapy water in here. Just got some soapy water I'm going to spray on the end there. Should help us lubricate a little bit. There we go. Push this all the way on. It's going to require quite a bit of muscle to get this thing on. And there we have it, with some elbow grease, muscle. We now have this hose on this line. Let's see if we can slide this hose clamp up to the end here. May give us some trouble getting past this hump. You have to loosen this clamp a little bit with a screwdriver. You can slide the sucker on right there. Now, what we're going to want to do is kind of position the hose in a way that it's not going to interfere with the bolts. I believe right about there is good. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this thing down. There we go. Nice and tight. And take a look at that, guys. You can see this is now secured. We shouldn't have any problem worrying about this line coming off. It is now secured. It is going to seal properly. Again, these band clamps here help to give it an even seal around the edge. So we're ready to go ahead and start putting this thing back together. Now let me show you guys what we are going to use. This little adapter here, which is a 3/8 to 5/16 barbed fitting adapter. And the reason we're going to be using this reducer adapter is because if you take a look at the factory line here, again, this is the line where we cut it off. It goes from being this steel line here to this rubber hose. And if you can see, this rubber hose is actually a 5/16 rubber hose, because that's what size the line is underneath the vehicle. But this 5/16 rubber hose mates up to this 3/8 line here. And again, we cut this line off, which was 3/8. So now we have this 3/8 hose that we're going to need to reduce down to a 5/16. I did have a lot of trouble trying to locate this Barb fitting, guys. I looked at all of my local hardware stores and I could not seem to find one that was a reducer like this. It goes from 3/8 to 5/16. So I found this one on Amazon. If you guys are looking for one, I'm going to leave a link in the description. You know, if you guys have Amazon Prime, it'll get here in a couple days. I had to wait a little bit longer. Again, we had the winter storm, so our deliveries were running behind. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this 3/8 end here. We're going to put another clamp on this side here, and then we're going to connect it to the hose that's underneath the vehicle, and then we're going to put a clamp on there as well. I'm not going to do that yet because I'm going to have to kind of cut this hose to fit. So right now I'm going to slide this hose in behind the intake manifold. I'm going to bolt this up to the intake manifold, and then underneath the vehicle, I'm going to cut this hose where it meets the other line underneath the vehicle, and then we're going to use this barb fitting to connect it all. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and install this line. All right, guys, so moving back under the hood, I've got my line here. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of snake this behind the intake down to the back of the car here, or underneath the car. There is kind of this cavity that I have to snake it through. Right about there. And this line here is going to bolt to the bottom side of the intake manifold. Now we're gonna go ahead and put our two bolts in. All right. Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Okay, so we're underneath the vehicle. If you look over here, you can see the transmission. And right up here, you can see our fuel line, this right here. And if you look, we have our Barb fitting right here. Again, this is our 3/8 hose that's coming from the intake manifold. We've got this fuel injection hose clamp on here. And then, of course, we have the reducer that reduces it down to 5/16. And we have a hose clamp here. So this is nice and secure. I'm going to go ahead and take some tie strap, and we're going to tie strap it up to here where the rest of these lines and harnesses are. Now, if you look right up here, you can see this is a remnant of the old fuel line. They removed it. This is whatever's left of it. But again, like I said, this line is really corroded, so there's no use in trying to salvage this line. Right now, we have this fuel injection high pressure hose running all the way back to the gas tank. Hopefully you guys can see that down there. Very difficult to see, I know, but we are underneath the vehicle. There's just not a whole lot of space down here. But if you look, the fuel line runs along all the way up to the fuel filter back there to the gas tank. So this is all high pressure fuel hose up to this point. Again, it's 5/16. Once we reach this brass adapter here, it turns into 3/8 and it connects to the back of the intake manifold. So again, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and tie strap this up here, make sure it's out of the way, and we're good to go. Okay guys, once again, it's time for the moment of truth. This is going to be our second attempt at trying to start this engine up. Now, before I actually try to start the engine, I'm going to put the key in, turn the key on, and cycle the ignition back and forth a few times to prime the fuel pump. I do want to make sure that we don't have any more fuel leaks before we actually try to start it. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to do. All right, key's on. You guys can hear the fuel pump priming. I'm going to turn the key off, turn it back on. You can hear the fuel pump priming once again. Let's try it the third time. Let's do it a fourth time. Make sure we don't have any fuel leaks. I don't see any fuel leaks. Let me take a look behind the intake manifold. It is nice and dry. Let's go ahead and try to start this thing. Here we go. All right. All right, guys, so as you can see, the engine is running. It is smoking a lot, but that's because it's burning off the oil from the exhaust. Again, this thing hasn't run in quite some time. I did have to top off. The coolant was going a little bit low. Again, we don't seem to have any fuel leaks or anything. Taking a look underneath the vehicle. Got nothing here, but I will say that we do have a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust here. So it is getting kind of nasty in the garage, but I want to take a look at the gauge cluster, make sure we don't have any indicators here. Check our coolant temperature. Where are we at? Okay, looks like our coolant temperature looks good. Take a look at the oil pressure. You guys can see we got about 45 psi on the oil pressure. The fuel gauge is showing low. I'm not sure how much fuel they actually put in this car. Our charging system is reading. Sorry, this thing's kind of in the way. Let me move this over. The charging system is reading, looks like about 14.5 volts. Trying to charge this battery up. So right now, everything actually looks pretty good. I don't see any check engine light. I mean, the car is trying to find its idle right now. You guys can hear the idle's kind of surging up and down. I'm gonna let this thing run for a little while, hopefully burn the rest of this oil off, and just closely monitor this thing. Make sure that we don't have an overheating condition. Yeah, you guys can see how much smoke I got in my garage right now. I got the garage door open right now, but I might have to step out for a minute here. Anyway, like I said, I'm gonna let this thing run for a little while. Hopefully it can find the correct idle speed and get back to normal running condition here. All right, guys, so I don't know if you saw that. Hopefully it showed up on the camera, but there was an instance where I revved the engine and we had some serious sparks coming out of this alternator here. Now, looking at this alternator, I mean, this terminal here is pretty rusted. So I'm not sure. See that rubber just falling apart? If it has anything to do with that, probably this bad contact right here. Or maybe the alternator itself may just have too much friction inside. Maybe the bearing is going out. So, I mean, aside from this right here, I definitely think that this is going to need a new alternator, especially because this car's been sitting so long. I'm pretty sure that it's gotten some water intrusion into the alternator, so that bearing is probably no good anymore. I guess while I'm at it, let me go ahead and clear something up with you guys. If you remember from the last video, when I first tried to start this car up, we had this kind of start and stall issue where the car would start and then immediately stall. Well, I was able to figure out what was going on with that and how to remedy the situation. So this car has the battery in the trunk, and of course the car had been sitting for a while, so the battery had gotten low. You guys can see I have the battery charger over here. Anyway, when I attempted to crank the car, I guess the battery voltage got below a certain threshold. It set off the anti-theft system. So up here on this little gauge here in the middle at the top, there's a little light that comes on that says theft. Well, it was blinking, and I don't know if you guys might have noticed it in the first video, but these little side markers right here were actually blinking at the time. Well, that's because we set off the anti-theft, and once we did that, it didn't matter how many times we charged the battery. The car was just not going to start. I was able to find some information on some forums about how to remedy this condition. So if you guys look underneath the driver's side over here, you'll find that there is this module right here. And if you read the label there, it says remote entry receiver. Well, this remote entry receiver module has to be reset. So if you take a look at this little green wire that's hanging here, this is part of that remote entry receiver module. And so the procedure to reset this module is you need to ground this wire here. So ground this wire. I believe you may be able to ground it to one of these pins in here. I'm not really sure, because the way they had it, it was actually just stuck up in here. That's how the car was when I got here. I don't know if one of these is a ground. I mean, possibly this black and green wire. I'm not sure, but I just took my jumper lead, grounded this wire, and then you hit the button, the unlock button on this little remote here, and that disarms the anti-theft system and allows you to start the car. All right, guys, it is the following day. Last night, we finally got the car started up. I let this thing get to operating temperature, gave it a few revs. It finally found its idle. The engine runs great. Also, we don't have any leaks. We don't have any fuel leaks. We don't have any oil leaks, no coolant leaks at the moment. So far, everything looks good. My next task is I'm going to go ahead and remove the clutch pedal and the bracket assembly. If you guys remember from the very first video, the clutch pedal was kind of worn out. So I'm going to take the bracket off. I'm going to remove it, take a look at it, see if we can fix it. I don't know if it just needs a bushing or it needs to be tightened. Hopefully it's a simple fix. At this point, I'm not going to attempt to try to video record this because there's hardly any room for me to fit down there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and skip over to where I have the bracket removed, and I'll show it to you on the table over here. All right, guys, so here we have it. The clutch pedal and the brake pedal assembly complete with the bracket. Wasn't too difficult to take out the vehicle. We have 2 bolts up here at the top, and then we have 4 bolts here on the back side where the firewall goes. And then we had 1 more bolt here on the side, which actually we had to get it from behind the driver's side fender. Wasn't too difficult, but now that we have this assembly out, I can show you guys what the problem is. So again, if you take a look at the clutch pedal here, when I move it up and down and I move it side to side, you can see that we have a lot of play, excessive play side to side. Let me get you a little bit of a close up there, right there. Whoops, almost dropped it. Move it back a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at the side to side movement of this clutch pedal. And what the problem was is that whenever the customer or the driver would try to push the clutch pedal, it would not fully disengage because it was hitting this little bracket here. You can see where it's been hitting this bracket. Sorry about that. You guys see that mark right there? Yeah, so whenever you would push the clutch pedal, it would just hit here rather than doing a full travel, so it would never fully release the clutch. So what we're gonna have to do is we're going to have to, first of all, take a close look at this and see if there is some type of bushing that can be replaced. Hopefully there is. And it looks like to me, there's this white bushing in here. There's a E-clip right here. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that first. There we go. Then we can go ahead and try to slide this pedal off like so. And there we have it, the clutch pedal assembly. And there's this plastic bushing inside of it, which if you guys take a look, It looks to be pretty worn out. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that we can buy these at the local auto parts store. At least I hope that's the case, because then we could probably fix this pretty fast. So I'm gonna go ahead and run down to the parts store, see if I can find replacement bushings for this thing. Okay guys, you know what? Before I head out to the parts store, I wanted to show you real quick. I took a closer look at this clutch pedal. You can see this hole right here is where the shaft goes through, where the bushings are installed. If you take a close look at the hole, you can see that it's a little kind of wallowed out here toward the end. So I'm not sure if I should be worried about that or not. It looks a little bit better on this side here, but for sure on this end, it's pretty wallowed out. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to find some bushings. Hopefully the bushings will remedy this issue. If not, we may have to figure out what to do about this clutch pedal. So let me head to the parts store and see what happens.
A few moments later.
Okay guys, so we are back from the parts store, and like I expected, we were not able to find the exact replacement parts for these bushings. Again, if you guys take a look at this bushing here, I mean, it looks pretty worn out. It's not exactly broken or cracked in any way. This is just one of them. There's two of them. They go together like that, but neither one of them look like they're extremely damaged or anything like that. But, you know, I'm hoping that replacing these bushings could remedy our issue. Again, I wasn't able to find the exact replacement, but I did find this assortment in Dorman. You guys take a look at the part number 74016. This is mainly made for Ford and GM vehicles. And as you guys can see, these are way bigger than the ones I have here. So what I went ahead and did is I bought these anyway, because I figured that I could try to cut these down to size. So, I mean, you guys can see the size difference right there. Now, I did manage to do one already. This is not perfect looking, but it looks like it may just get the job done, or at least let us know whether or not the bushings are even going to remedy this problem, because I would hate to get these bushings, wait a week for them, only to find out that we need to replace this whole pedal assembly. So I really want an answer now, hoping that just cutting these down to fit will work for us. Again, take a look. I cut this down and you can see, you know, it isn't perfect, but it fits in the hole. So I'm going to attempt to do the same thing with this one here. I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece off of it, just using a pair of scissors here. And essentially what I'm doing is just kind of taking it a chunk at a time and just kind of doing it at an angle. Be careful not to cut your fingers off when you do this. Nope, still too big. It's overlapping. So I'm going to give it another trim. We're going to try that. And there we have it. I believe that should work. Take a look inside. You guys can see where it meets up. It's not perfect, but it's pretty dang close. So now we're going to go ahead and try to install this pedal and see if it works for us. First, I'm going to hit it with some of this white lithium grease. Make sure we grease this all up here. Then we're going to go ahead and try to slide it on there. Like so. Keep some pressure on it. And there we have it. It already feels much tighter. Let me go ahead and put the E-clip back on. There we have it. I think that ought to do it. I mean, at least for now, you know, hopefully this will hold up for some amount of time, but I will let the customer know that if this starts to come apart again, he's probably going to need to go ahead and replace the whole pedal assembly, which you guys can guess is not easy to find because a lot of these parts are discontinued. So, you know, a lot of the stuff you have to buy it used, and finding somebody that's parting out their 1993 Dodge Viper is not an easy thing to find. So at this point, I think we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this back into the vehicle. Okay, so I've got the pedal assembly reinstalled. Again, it's not perfect, but it's just gonna have to do. At least right now, it's not hitting that bracket. But again, I do feel a little bit of play now that I have this thing installed. I really don't know how long that's gonna hold up, but I think eventually this is going to need to be replaced. at this point, there's nothing I can really do about it. I just need to get this car drivable so I can drive it back to the shop. And this clutch needs to be usable. Right now, it's working. So let me go ahead and start this thing up and see if I can put it into gear. All right, guys, so inside the Viper, I've got the key in my hand. I'm gonna go ahead and stick it into the ignition, turn the ignition on. I'm gonna go ahead and push the clutch pedal all the way down. We're gonna see if this thing starts. If you guys remember, before we were not able to start it, just pushing the clutch down because the clutch pedal would not go all the way down. It would not fully engage the clutch safety switch. So now that we fixed the pedal, let's see if this thing starts. All right, you guys can see, started right up. Now let's see if this thing goes into gear, because at first, because the clutch was not fully disengaging, it was very difficult to put it into gear. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to put it into first. Went right into first, let's go into second, right into second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Let's see if it goes into reverse. Yep. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera up outside because I wanna see what happens when I put it into first gear. All right, guys, so after reviewing the footage of me going through all the gears, like I said, I went ahead and I accelerated first, through second, through third, through fourth, through fifth and sixth. And I wasn't sure, being inside the vehicle, whether or not the tires were actually moving. But once I reviewed the video footage, I could tell that this tire was barely moving. Then I looked out the window or out the door on the driver's side and the tire wasn't moving at all. So I'm not sure what to think. I'm really hoping that there's not a problem with the clutch itself, because if the clutch is totally shot, then I'm not going to be able to move this car at all. And if that's the case, then, you know, I have to figure out whether or not I'm going to be the one to drop this transmission and replace the clutch, or the other shop is going to. My plan really was to be able to drive this thing back to the shop and not have to pay a couple $100s to have it towed, because I'm about 30 miles away from the shop. So I'm not really sure what to think right now. I guess my next step is I'm going to go ahead and lower the car onto the ground and see if I can drive this thing. All right, guys, so we are back inside the car. As you can hear, it's running right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it into first gear, clutch down, go into first, and we're gonna see if this car actually moves. I am fully released on the clutch right now, and this car is not moving. I'm gonna try to shift it into second. You guys can see the car is not moving. Third. This car is not moving at all. I don't even hear the engine wanting to stall or anything. Like, if I just don't even push on the accelerator at all and I put it into first gear and I let up on the clutch, you know, under normal circumstances, the car not rolling, the engine, you would hear it kind of stumble a little bit and stall. But if I let off, listen, absolutely no change. Like, we have no connection between the transmission or the clutch and the wheels of the vehicle. Now, while I was underneath the car, I did check to make sure that our drive shaft and half shafts and everything were in good condition. And when I put the transmission in neutral and I grab the drive shaft by hand and I spin it, I'm able to spin the wheels. So I know everything from that point back is good. So it definitely has either something to do with the clutch or the transmission itself. You know, hopefully there's not a broken part inside the transmission, like a broken input shaft or something like that, because, you know, that could really turn out to be a major issue. The other thing that I'm noticing while I'm in here and the car is running is that it looks to me like our alternator stopped charging. So if you take a look at the voltmeter here, we were at 12 volts and you can see we're slowly tapering off. So not only do we have an issue with the transmission now, looks like our alternator is giving out. You can see the battery light just came on. So yeah, we got some more issues upon more issues upon more issues. All right guys, so once again, not the outcome that I wanted. I was really hoping to be able to drive this car today, but by the looks of things, really looks like there's something major wrong with either the transmission or the clutch. I'm not sure if I'm going to be the one to repair those things. At this point, I don't even know if I want to, but there's a lot that goes with that because, you know, I kind of started this project with the pretense that, you know, it would kind of do good on YouTube because initially the first video did. That's the reason I paid to have this car towed over here. And that's the reason I started the project, was because, you know, the first video I put out got up to like 320,000 views or something like that within like the first couple of months. So it turned out to be a really popular video. So I decided, you know, hey, I'm making enough money on the videos of this project that, you know, I can just go ahead and do the labor for free, which essentially I'm doing a lot of this labor for free for the shop just so that I can have content to put on the channel. Yeah, I know. The problem is that the subsequent videos that I've put out with this Viper have gotten nowhere near the amount of views or attention that the first video did. And so, you know, at this point, I'm actually losing money. Not only am I losing money in the fact that I'm doing labor for free and the fact that, you know, these videos are not making any views, so they're not generating any significant revenue to at least break even. I'm also utilizing the space in my garage. So at this point, I've had to put off other projects because I don't have room in this garage. There's only one car that fits in here. And at the moment, it's been this Viper that's taken this space up for I don't know how many months now. So at this point, I'm not really sure if I want to continue, if it makes sense for me to continue. Because at this point, I'm kind of just bleeding money and people don't really seem to be as interested in this car as I thought they would. So anyways, at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and end off the video. Like I always say, I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it educational. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.